So my name is Giardina. My pronouns are he, they. I am the Vice President of Young Progressive Being, which is a pro-choice NGO. Under 30, most of us, we are aging, so we might end up being progressive beings, and we're very young progressive beings. We are the first, mostly women rights and feminist NGO to come out in favor of decriminalization of sex work. So yes, so it's a constant fight that we have to do, to be honest, with the other feminist NGOs locally, but something that we are very committed in doing. And I'm very happy to have been asked by GRM to coordinate and moderate this session. I have also researched sex work for a bit in my master's dissertation, and I'm quite interested in the topic. I can introduce you, or you can introduce yourselves individually. I think that would work better. I can speak much.
Yeah.
Given that I don't have.
Yes. Hi everyone. I'm Luca Stevenson, and I'm a sex worker, and I am currently the director of programs at the European Sex Worker Rights Alliance, which is a network of more than 100 organizations in 30 countries in Europe and Central Asia. And I've been involved in sex worker rights activism and advocacy for 20 years. I was involved in the French Union of Sex Workers, different group in the UK, like Sex Worker Advocacy Resistance Movement, Scott Pep in Scotland. And I'm also a volunteer with the Jasmine Project, which is a project of Médecins du Monde against violence against sex workers. I'm on the board of different organizations like the Global Network of Sex Work Project, which is our global organization, Red Umbrella Fund, which is the first funder for sex workers, and National Agreement, which is also an anti-violence project based in the UK. And pronouns are you.
I am Svetlana Buttigieg. I am a social worker by profession. I have been working with Agency Watch, which is the one of the main social work agencies in Malta. I have a master's in working with children and families, and for the past 3 years, I have been running two main services with Agency Watch, which are the human trafficking service and the sex work support program.
And I'm Sabrina Sanchez. I'm the executive director of ESMA. I'm also a sex worker. I'm a migrant, a trans woman. I'm originally from Mexico. I came to Europe when I was 25, to Spain. I started doing sex work since then. And it's been 18 years now of sex work. I was involved in the local activism with the Upper Sex, that is the Association de Profesionales del Sexo, sex professional associations in Barcelona. There we had the idea of becoming a trade union of sex workers. So I'm a co-founder of OTRAS, that is the Spanish sex worker trade union.
Perfect. So these are our panelists. So I would like to maybe Luca or Sabrina or both of you can give us a little bit of a context, right? So what is sex work ultimately, and why do we need to discuss sex work? And maybe a little bit about when we speak of sex work, what are the legal approaches that are taken by different countries? So I don't know, maybe Luca can answer the first two questions, Sabrina can answer the second question. That's up to you how it went.
Sex work. Well,
Sex work.
The way we define sex work is obviously, for us, we try not to use the word prostitution anymore. If you want to use the word prostitution, we can still be friends as long as you don't support its criminalization. We use the word sex work because prostitution is very heavy-loaded terms, which has lots of negative connotation, also related to stigmatization and criminalization. And what we mean by sex work is any kind of labor that people engage in, like sexual labor that people engage in. So it can include prostitution, and that can be street prostitution, indoor, in brothels, online, like digitalized sex work. It can also include stripping, although some stripper will say this is not sex work, this is different. Some stripper will say this is sex work. It includes the porn industry, actors in the porn industry, whether it's like, official studios or more like amateur porn. So basically any kind of like sexual labor that is exchanged. And then in this, we also recognize that there is a lot of variety of people who engage in sex work, and it can be casual, it can be what we call survival sex or transactional sex, So exchanging sex for a sandwich, for example, because you haven't had a sandwich for a while, or for housing because you risk homelessness that night. So we see that really as a spectrum from this to high-end dominatrix who works at like €1,000 a night with clients. So they're really like a huge spectrum. And also like in sex work, there is then different type of like, massage, erotic massage, domination, etc. And it really varies and it changes a lot. And in particular since COVID, there's been a huge change towards digitalization of sex work, obviously with OnlyFans and this type of website. But more and more people are engaging in this type of sex work. And the boundary between face-to-face sex work and digitalized sex work, like porn, is more and more like changing. More and more like escorts who are going to advertise are going to have to take pictures or videos in order to boost their profile. So in some way, like these definitions are getting more blurry. And we also recognize that there's a lot of like different people working in the sex industry, cis people, cis women in particular, single mother, but also lots of like LGBTQI people, and in particular trans women who face like high levels of exclusion from the education or labor market, but also like gay men or men in general as well, including straight men. Like for example, in like refugee settings, we see lots of like young men selling sex in order to survive. So we see that sex work is a phenomenon that can touch a lot of people from different classes. And the same as well, when you think of sex work, it's not necessarily like your main income. Lots of people who do sex work have other jobs. And currently with the cost of living crisis and lots of people like having jobs but still living in poverty, we see lots of people who have jobs still doing sex work on the side in order to make ends meet.
And why it's important that we talk about it?
Yeah.
Well, basically, one of the first questions, or the typical question that that journalists make us like, why did you just start the sex work? Why did you start doing this job? And I don't know what's the answer that they expect or whatever, but it's so simple and so mundane. Like, I needed the money. I needed the money. I needed it to survive. Or I needed it because I have no other choice. Because, for example, I'm trans and I don't get tired in a place in the normal work settings. I need to survive. So it's important that we discuss and that we realize that sex worker rights are basic human rights, and that influences everybody else. So if our rights are diminished, if our rights are eroded, so with the time, the rights for everybody is going to be the same. Usually, we've been traditionally, excluded. The word prostitution comes from prostitution of marriage. That is basically that you are charging money for something that is supposed to be free. So that's why, that's also because of the term. And sometimes when they criticize sex work, or they criticize us for defending people in sex work, they don't realize that we are defending people that has very little options, and mostly we are defending our collective. There's and this is something that sometimes shocks me. People that become as LGBT allies, or the MEP that is the lesbian champion, but in the other hand is an anti-sex worker. That is also not knowing your story. You're knowing the history of the movement. They fill their mouths with Sylvia and Marsha because they started the movement and they throw the first rock. But some people forget that they were sex workers as well. That they founded the Star House, all the things all the support that they coming for the kids, they were funding it on their sex work. So in this case, we need to keep this conversation going. We have always been the scapegoats, or the political play, or the political I don't know, penny of bargain that has always thrown us to the margins and has always denied our agency and our rights. And basically, we need to keep this conversation, because our constant attempts from time to time to trying to criminalize sex work. The church was first to do it, then the law, and it's always an issue of body autonomy and an issue of female. Let's put it like that way, like because in broader context of female control of the female sexuality and the body. You know, it's like the dichotomy of the saint or the whore. So it is important that we keep an eye on the human rights of sex workers when these discussions happen, to not talk about those without those. And I don't know if it's convenient to say now about what happened today, or we'll get to that later. So I'm gonna stop here right now for this question. I'm gonna leave it now.
I realized that you better the question today. Yeah. But Sabrina, you have actually mentioned quite a lot human rights and sex workers' rights and sex working in the minds, right? So I do think that it's an intersection that cannot deny, right? That sex workers have the rights, and unfortunately they are continuously being denied. And I turn to you guys, Svetlana. You work at Agency of Sex, which is, after all, a social work agency among that, so dealing quite a bit with human rights topics. So how do you find this balance between the intersection of human rights and sex workers, also maybe giving us a little bit of a brief of the program that you manage, and what are the services I think that are being offered in this part of the sex worker support program?
First of all, I believe that any work, any profession, and the people who work in it should be safeguarded as much as possible, and us as social workers should be looking after their well-being, and that everyone is treated rightly and fairly at their place of work. 3 years ago, we were approached by the Human Rights Directorate, and they proposed to us this service, through which we started this new program, through which we are helping sex workers with their rights, with also their daily needs. It's pretty much a generic service actually, because we help the person with whatever help they need. So each and every care plan is based upon the individual's wishes. So if a person wishes to stay in this work, we fully support the person and we see what kind of help we can offer them. So sometimes they come for us because of housing issues. Sometimes they come for us because they need help with the budgeting. And sometimes they come to us because they feel they have the need for more parenting skills. And we are there for the wishes of the client. Sometimes we also have sex workers who wish to go out of the work, and we are also there to support them in finding different employment. But there is nothing set in stone, and as I was explaining, we are there to make the wishes of the client a reality as much as possible. We also do a lot of outreach. We go out in the streets, we try to engage sex workers and see how best we can help them. Some of them might not need any help at all from us, because some of them might say, "Thank you for your services, but we are fine as we are." We just give them a contact number, so at events at any point in time, they will make their assistance. And even because in Malta and loitering and soliciting are still illegal. So even if they have, court cases, or they need to be interviewed by the police, we can prepare them for court, we can accompany them, we can advocate for them, and we can direct them also through the main legal aid in Malta, which is also free. And we can also offer counseling, so there are a lot of services that we can offer. Recently, we have also started group work. We are doing group work with migrants. We are holding different awareness sessions. with different groups of migrants, and it's been a great learning experience because sometimes there are services, but the services do not really hear the voices of the service users. And I truly believe that in order to create a good service, an effective service, first you have to see what the cohort of people that you are addressing need, because they are the experts in their own field and in their own reality. So once we started hearing different experiences and different voices of sex workers, then we started to shape our project. And we have a mission statement, we have a manual of procedures, and what we want is more clients. But I think that the legal system, the media, and cultural and societal stigma are still high in Malta in order to be able to market our service as we should. So sometimes even to go on the local TV station and you market the service that you have, you need to be very careful about how you word things in order, So we would like to get more service users because we believe that there is a cohort who do need our help. However, the clients have not come in enough numbers yet. So we want to increase the numbers because we want to help as many people as possible.
Thank you. Thanks, Svetlana. You have also mentioned working with migrants, and that is one of the intersectionalities one of the areas that I love talking about is actually intersectionality. And I think that if we speak of one identity as if that makes us the person that we are, we're doing that huge respect to ourselves and also to the people that we are talking about. Maybe Sabrina, you can talk to us a little bit about what we refer to as the hierarchy and the experiences of different sex workers and how much they can be very much different from one another, being that they are not on this group, but also giving us a little bit of a brief of how the experience of the migrant sex worker, how the experience of the trans sex worker, how the experience of a non-documented migrant sex worker can vary from one to the other.
Sure. About the hierarchy, of course, this is what we call it, like hierarchy. That has to be, it's a reflection of basically the world that we are living. There are usually the highest paid or the ones that are like in scale up in money-wise and etc. Are generally cis-white, cisgender woman, like white, middle class, maybe, or they got in sex work to complete an income that many of them have their jobs and this is an extra money or another way to survive, or they also I've known many, for example, dominatrix that basically they do it for fun, of course, and earning money and earning a lot of money, and of course, and from there, the scale goes down. If you are a cis woman, but that you are not white, then the scale goes down, and it's happened everywhere. Also, since from micropersonals like a strip club, for example, that we constantly. I've never worked in a strip club like the trans. So this is another thing that's depending on your on how are you perceived or how you are. Like you can work in certain spaces or not. For example, for a trans woman, it's really difficult to work in a strip club, for example, because unless you're not have a great passing, you have surgery, whatever, it's like, and nobody, and you go stealth, yeah, maybe you can work, but that's not the case like in the most of the cases of the trans women. So the scales go down, and that also is, in fact, that it's an ongoing conversation that we have internally in the movement, as Aaron mentioned, like we're not homogeneous, like, we can call ourselves a community, but really it's like, it's like if the supermarket employees were calling themselves a community. No, they're not like this. That's more like a unit.
A community of diverse backgrounds.
Yeah, but it's like more. It makes more sense like it's a trade union. So for me, when you are, it's part of your identity. It's like it's something that you cannot. Yeah, it's always there. Sex work is like any other job. There's something at the moment that you do it, and 2 years after, you're not doing it, or yes. So it's not part of the personality. So in this, let's say, in this group of people, homogeneous people, of heterogeneous people, there of course it's we also have our internal fights, our internal differences, because it's normal, no? But we are trying, as a movement, I think that we are trying to address this kind of things, trying to be also conscious about the different dynamics of power that also exist within our movement, that happen to be, again, race and class, basically, again. So the experience of, for example, as a trans woman, I live currently in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, and the windows, the working spaces for trans women are very minimum, for example. So there are, I think, 10 windows from 1,200, no, 1,000, more than 1,000 in the whole city. So,
and probably the more you pass, the more likely that you get that window, no?
Not necessarily. It's like, if you can pay it, because you're paying for the space as well. It's not that you get hired and no, you basically rent the space. You have to pay 117 euros per night. So if you work on weekends, if you work on the weekdays, it's a little bit less, like 120. But anyway, so that you can see that from the way of working. That of course that lack of space of on a regulated space like the Netherlands put you on an illegality, because, for example, in this case of trans, we cannot have the space for the window. We have to work from home, and in some places that's not legal for the regulation. In the Netherlands, said, okay, you only can do sex work in the authorized premises. If you do it at your house, then you can have a fine, for example. So we find this kind of very important to address within the movement, because we are mostly and I'm more focused in the question of race. That's where in fact many of the issues come, and many of the inequalities come. So we're trying to address that and also deconstruct what we learn, because we all have been educated and raised in a racist world, and we still need to dismantle that.
Race is a factor, but also gender and gender identity, right? And you put some reference to gender identity in respect to being cis or trans, but also it plays into the fact whether you're a man or a woman, irrespective of whether you're trans or cis here. Aurora, at the beginning, she was talking to Luca, and they were discussing how it's not very common that we see a male sex worker when we're discussing sex work. So, Luca, what I would like to know is what are the challenges in being a male sex worker, but also what are the benefits of being a male sex worker in respect to female sex workers?
Well, I think it's a tricky question, because as a male sex worker, you still have plenty of privilege that you are inheriting from being a man. So, for example, you face less violence because your clients are mostly are men as well. So there's usually less violence from male client to male sex workers, although it still happens often. there's been like, even serial killers have been like targeting male sex workers in really like horrendous ways. But I think it's one of the rare jobs where usually like male are paid less than women. So even if you look at the basic rate of like an escort, let's say in one of the capital cities like Paris, London, Amsterdam, a male sex worker will usually charge less than female sex workers. But again, it depends on the class, on race, on capacities to like advertise in certain places. And I do think as well, like maybe that's my point of view, that for male sex workers, after a certain age, you have less chances to continue in the industry. So you don't see so many male sex workers continuing after a certain age, where I feel maybe it's more possible for like cis women and trans women. But at the same time, I feel like from what I've seen with male sex workers, there's also, again, like huge, differences between, again, like, somebody who is documented and has a degree and decide to do sex work on the side to pay for their study or to have like a more easy life, and somebody who is, let's say, a refugee from Syria. Like we work a lot with our members in Greece, for example, the Red Umbrella Athens, and they have a program for refugees, for like sex workers in general, but lots of them are refugees arriving in Greece. And lots of them are like young Syrian men who are selling sex in the street of Athens for like €5 for a sandwich or for something like this. And, how can you talk about, that's where like the question of like, who is the most privileged at the end is like, does it really matter? If you have to sell sex for €5 or for a sandwich, it doesn't matter whether you're trans or male or cis, etc. So for us, we really look more like what is the material condition in which to sell sex. And it's the same, like I have like some trans sex worker friends who are making a killing in the industry. They are like making so much money and good for them. Like they really managed to like get out of really bad situation and advertise something that they know they can cash out, and now are doing great and have a great life, etc. And they should be like fully supported. So for us, we usually look at like, but everybody in the sex industry, whether they do it because of lack of choice, because of full choice, or because the person should be protected and their rights, I'm sure. But with this, we also try to look at what are the needs of most marginalized and most precarious sex workers. And in the question you were asking earlier about undocumented migrants, that's basically the case. We know that in Europe, the vast majority of sex workers are migrants. Around 80% in Western Europe are migrants, a lot of them from Latin America, Africa, Asia, other part of the world. And lots of people work in the sex industry because of high risk of violence in their own country, like for trans people in Latin America and other part of the world, because of poverty, more and more because of climate change as well. We know that, we always talk about migrant crises, etc. Like there's no migrant crisis, there's just people moving, and people will keep moving. And whether Fortress Europe continue to pour billions of euros into like constructing this wall around Europe, people will come to Europe and will sell sex because that's one of the rare options available to them. So as is why we're also advocating that all migrants should be regularized. You don't need to be a victim of trafficking to be regularized. You don't need to be a victim of crime to be regularized. If you're in Europe, you should be regularized, and you should have access to other forms of employment. We don't believe that anyone should sell sex because that's the last option available to them. And this is what for us is really like the most shocking in all the discourse of people who are pushing for criminalization of sex work or criminalization of clients. They know real well that people are doing sex work because of lack of options. That's what they say themselves. But then they will say, oh, poor people, they don't choose to sell sex. They do it because of lack of options. Let's criminalize clients, the only options that they found. And one of the most cynical examples I've seen was in Ireland, when they were discussing the criminalization of clients, which in this Swedish model, prostitution is a form of violence. We need to abolish it. We need to criminalize clients. We had a case in Ireland where asylum seekers, like the media discovered that female asylum seekers, mothers, were selling sex in the street of Dublin or Cork, somewhere in Ireland, because they needed to feed their kids. So there was a big news, like terrible story, this poor asylum seeker forced to sell sex in the street to feed their kids because they get €20 a week from the government. And the response from the Minister of Justice, Frances Fitzgerald, who's still very active and pain in the ass of everybody, was like, oh, that's really terrible. These poor women are being exploited. We should criminalize the client. And then they push for the criminalization of clients. It's like, how fucking evil do you have to be to realize the situation that these women are in? And instead of talking to them, it'd be like, what do you need? Well, maybe like, €20 more would be enough so I can buy a bit of food for my kid or a toy once a week or something. To go in your head and be like, oh yeah, let's send the police. What happened to this woman as well when they are being caught selling sex, which is not like legal activity either? So for us, we really think that the whole issue of prostitution, like to go back to the first question, is actually not specifically about prostitution. Like we're talking about socio-economic needs of some of the most vulnerable people. And we honestly don't understand why it's still debate. Each time we have and it's really amazing to be here, and it's amazing that everyone has put, and lots of people have put lots of efforts in making us be here. But it's also a bit sad that we are here and not in the main hotel, and that is not the central conversation. It's amazing that we have conversation about LGBT people in sport and in education and in family. That's amazing. But the truth is that the most marginalized LGBT people in our communities are sex workers. The most marginalized people are trans women, migrant sex workers, and that's the main people who are being killed in our community. And the fact that we are not still on the top of the conference being like, it's time to give rights to trans, to LGBT sex workers is a problem. It's amazing to be here, but it's still a problem that we are not central to the conversation. We can't talk about ending violence against LGBT people if we don't talk about the specific situation of LGBT sex workers and in particular trans sex workers. We can tell you the name of 20, 30 trans people who've been murdered. All of them were sex workers. You go to Turkey, there were 30, 40 murders of LGBT people. The majority of them were trans women. The majority of them were sex workers because there was no other type of work for them. And often the perpetrator was the police, or the police was hiding the crime. We have many cases from Turkey where the police were, I won't even go into the details, horrific sexual violence, murder of sex workers, and being completely brushed off. So for us to be part of the LGBT movement, and for 40 years demanding that our rights and our demands are central to the movement, and it's still not the case, is really frustrating.
You rest your case.
Yeah.
So if I may just add, giving us a bit of context, really, it's not so foreign, honestly, of a trans woman, a trans female sex worker being murdered. So in Malta, in 2004, which is 20 years now down the line, there was the murder of a trans woman who happened to also be a sex worker, murdered allegedly. Because I have to say allegedly now, because our courts have failed us and have solved this crime. Allegedly murdered by her. Then she was really trafficked, and one of her clients. So we have this case of a female sex worker, of a trans woman sex worker, that because our system does not regard being trans as important, does not regard being a sex worker as being an important part of our society. Of course, now things have changed for 2004, really, but especially when it comes to the LGBTQ+ movement. But honestly and truly, if our courts in 20 years have not managed to solve this case, the police have put down in the alleged murder, but then took 20 years to actually take this person to court, how much are we actually doing justice? Yeah. So sex workers being murdered is not something that's just happening in Turkey, so we can just rest and be happy here. It happens all the time, and probably it happens also behind closed doors and don't even know it. So I think having this discussion in Malta is also pretty valid, because these are not things that just happen in other countries and just happen outside of the happy Malta, right? So I really thank you for that, Luca. You've also mentioned getting money to be able to afford a house, to be able to pay the bills, to be able to actually give a sandwich to your child, right? Mm-hmm. So I turn to you, I guess, Svetlana. How often do you see this family dynamic, right? How does sex work affect the lives of people within the context of their family? So maybe even through the clients that you meet, of course, without giving out any details. But do you meet scenarios where we have sex workers who are really just doing sex work to make ends meet, because that's the only option available to them to feed their children?
Yes, basically, with other cultures, different scenarios. There are those people whose family, they have sex work through generations. So, for instance, the grandmother is a sex worker, and the mother is a sex worker, and then the grandchildren are sex workers. And for them, it's a normality. They have grown up in this kind of work, and they feel comfortable even to talk amongst family because it's the normality they know. And then we have other people who, as you're rightly saying, they have to try to make ends meet. And they might be low-skilled workers who have to take on this kind of work to feed their children, to provide for rent, to just give, like you were saying, a sandwich to their child. So part of being a good parent is providing for your children. And it is very unfair that someone looks down on you just because you are trying to be a good parent and giving the best possible shot at life to your children. I have encountered mothers who tell me, I do anything for my children, and when I say anything, I really mean it's anything. I prefer to do work, get money, than going to steal. So that's something very respectable, in my opinion, because they are giving their time, they are giving a service, and they are getting paid for it. Because they want the best for their children. They want their children to be good at school. They want the children, I don't know if they have branded stuff for school to be like other children. Because we know that bullying is something which is very, very present nowadays. But then the children sometimes get bullied anyway, because they get to know what is the word of their mother or of their father, and they end up being bullied anyway. We've had cases of cyberbullying, children having to go through hate speech because they know about the work of their parents, which in reality their parents are doing because they love their children and they want to provide for them. So it's a very contradictory situation.
Yeah, thank you. To be honest, I think so when we're debating sex work, it's always, most of the panelists and say always, it's us, the people in favor of the decriminalization of sex work, and those advocating for the Nordic, which maybe for those who are not so accustomed to it, it's basically where the sex worker is decriminalized, but the buy-in of the sex work is the criminal offense. So of course that puts a little bit of a gray, puts them in a gray area. But I think what we are doing mostly when we're debating in such a manner is we're actually discrediting that not all sex workers are women trafficked, not all sex workers are living their luxury life, right? But some sex workers are just being good parents.
Yeah.
So I think if we're just looking at the two extremes, we're just doing at a service, ultimately. What I would like to do now, if maybe I could turn to the floor, and I have some concluding remarks after, but I think this is quite a discussion that ultimately we're not doing it to any justice, if we're just four people discussing it. So maybe anyone would like to share something, discuss, question, whatever.
Yeah, what's your take on the subject? Like, why you're here? Also,
Yes.
Why you're interested?
Here's my moderator.
I mean, I don't just like a lot of times.
I came to put my thumb in a chair and be a number of the room. I'm a sex worker, a social worker, and an artist from Maltese, but I was born overseas. And where I'm from, nothing matters until you can provide numbers and evidence that you brought people to the room, and then what you were saying can equate to, oh, this is a safe bet for giving more funding. Kind of. Where I'm from, sex work was decriminalized this year, and it doesn't come into effect until November, because of obviously the way the law works there. And that pretty much gives us all full workers' rights out of the same as any other industry, which is a great win. It's taken a really long time, and it's been very frustrating. However, it doesn't keep up to date with the way that sex work is becoming more digitized in ways that are not necessarily within the worker's control to be safe in. I have had to shift from mostly in real life sex work to digital work after the pandemic began. And some of the way that that's regulated and ties into like the kind of involuntary contracts we sign on social media by using their service or via certain websites means that we're also coming under a lot of new we're facing a lot of bias from large businesses that we're using to advertise. So I'm really concerned about the future of how that feels, and also how newer sex workers who've moved into the industry since it's been mostly digitized, how some of those people might not feel as unionized, and I'm interested in what the future of the unionization of sex workers kind of looks like for that in that case, especially when it does take bodies in a room. Sometimes it does take people coming to the rally to show face repeatedly for the slowest and most ignorant and most willfully ignorant of the lawmakers and of the people who target us to make those changes. So I'm concerned and interested about the future, but yeah, my frustrations are quite aligned to some of the remarks from earlier about like, we feel the same, it's just so lucky.
And feed them to that.
Yeah, definitely. As sex workers, we need to have this constant battle to justify our existence. It's a little bit like when you're trans, you know. Also, like it's like and when you're trans and sex worker, that you're justifying everyone.
Adding.
Yeah, you're just adding layers. So the I think that you can like a job, you can like or not like a work like that you don't do. For example, I don't like the police, and they are there. You know, and I think that getting into the military is like, you know, that is there. So we have to deal with that. And sex work is the same thing. You know, it's the other side of another patriarchal structure like marriage, you know. So if you are so voiceful and so anti-prostitution, then maybe you should be coherent and being against also and advocate and put those resources against like hetero marriage, for example, or marriage in general. Like why we need the state to regulate this. So I think these are conversations that basically have to go on. There are people that don't want to really go to the agreement, to the origin of all the things. They're just attacking a symptom, you know, and they're attacking the cough, and you're not attacking COVID. You know, you have to go deeper to the reasons that put ourselves in that place. Maybe of the people in the industry, they don't want to do that space, that work, and of course because it's not a work for everybody. Like working,
Which work is for everybody.
exactly. But people think that, well, if you're in an office, that is can do it everywhere. But yeah, but there are other jobs that not everybody's in an office, and that you cannot do. Like, you know, I think that no one of us could work in a slaughterhouse. You know, like killing cows for us to eat. And well, it exists, it happened, and then people.
And someone is doing it.
Exactly, someone is doing it. So we can, and they are never asked, like, do you like your job? You know, do you think that, you know, there's never has been that question for any other, and it's good that we are in the general workers union, because nobody has been asked if they like their job in order to have minimal rights. You know, it's like you have your rights because you're doing a job, and it's a fight that what has been fighting for more than 100 years. You know, the unionization and all these things. So if you cannot do that work, it's okay. Like maybe there are people that want to do it, and people that we see that is the less worst option in capitalism to survive. So why not doing it separately? Why not doing it with warranties? Why not doing with the basic labor rights, and also enforce those labor rights? Because this is another layer, and seems that okay, yes, we're going to put more police against the sex workers instead of okay, let's maybe give more money to the labor inspection. For example, in Spain, it's like this every year, like more defunding, And there are provinces that they're like one inspector for 500 businesses, or stuff like that. So the ratio, and if we decriminalize sex work, if we treat it like in a way like another business, then we will have those. So that's just like we are just in starting grid to go raise. We will have to deal, for example, in 10 years, there's the criminalization. We made a fantastic job, and sex work is decriminalized. Then we will have to go and fight again for the mere working labor reivindications, because there will be always capitalists that will try to take more from their employees, and then there will be another battle, and there's going to be a constant battle. But at least we will have the labor law is saying, okay, we have these rights, and we are not criminals. So we need to start to negotiate in as workers. And basically that's the fight nowadays. There's a big fight for not included in official documents, and I don't know, this coming to like in the European Union documents or on the countries that said that they don't recognize the word sex work because it's not a work. So that really is the fight, because once you become a worker, then you can sit on the table to bargain and on one-on-one with institutions, with the patrons, with society. But if you are not a worker and you're a victim that we have to rescue, then you cannot sit in the big table, because we don't know. So we are not that, and we are also playing in this space, because this is where we belong. We are just working class people trying to survive with this.
The next question you are not going to answer because we have to beat the time. Any questions from the floor? No, I'm joking. Any questions or feedback from the floor? Sure.
Can I just ask, I originally live in Sweden, so I brought with the exploitation of the Swedish model at 20 countries based on questioning and was fully diverse. There's still those thousands or proposals was a way to deal with sex or prostitution in many countries. But can I ask that with regard to very good arguments for the legalization of sex work versus the decriminalization of sex work? So I'd be very interested in your doing spawn behind which is the most I suppose wished for from sex workers with regard to issues that they do this on a daily basis.
Bro, I remember. I mean, very briefly, because you can read a lot about it, and
I like brief.
So basically, like we as sex workers are calling for the decriminalization of sex work, where it's opposed to legalization. So legalization is creating specific laws that will create an environment for sex work, but actually it can mean anything. So Turkey, prostitution is legal in Turkey. Few people do that, but actually prostitution is legal. There is legal brothels where few people work, but the vast majority are not working in these brothels. They work in the street, they work like trans women, for example. They can be arrested by the police, etc. So 90% of the industry is criminalized because there is only few brothels which are falling apart and the government is not repairing. Germany, it's legal, but it's almost illegal everywhere to work in the street. So I think 95% of the territory, it's illegal to work in the street. In Nevada, the only state in the US where prostitution is legal, it's legal to sell sex, but it has to be so specific condition that actually it's almost illegal anywhere. And the same with Greece. You want to work in a brothel, the brothel has to be 300 meters away from a church, a park, a school, a shop, etc. So it makes it almost impossible to open a brothel. And the same, only like cis women can work in a brothel, and you can't be divorced or something.
No, you cannot be married.
You cannot be married, but you can be single. But it's just like, there's so many rules. So for us, we just say like, no, actually it should be decriminalized. It shouldn't be considered a specific like legal or criminal issue should be decriminalized, and then we should be afforded the same labor right as other workers. And that still means there will be regulation around the sex industry, like we have in New Zealand and some states in Australia. But we don't need like a specific law that will make it more difficult for sex workers to work.
And I do think that ultimately legalization only benefits those who are at the very top of the hierarchy. So those who have documents, those who can open a bank account. So ultimately, those who are legally in a country, cis women. So I do think that's really the ones that we should be protecting the most, being the very bottom of that hierarchy, street-based sex workers, undocumented migrants. Really, they're not getting any benefit out of it, no? And we're even pushing them more underground than anything. So they're gonna get their prices lower to cater for those people who are not affording to go to the brothel. So ultimately it just makes it even less safe for sex workers.
Yeah.
So we do have time for one more feedback question. So you can fight for it. Let's fight for this one. 2 minutes of fame. Okay, Amanda's fighting for her 2 minutes of fame. Yay!
She's already famous.
Yeah, but he sort of like message and encouragement to noble sex workers to sort of their status is coming from. I was the person upset that you all were standing and if we're in great and the respect right among trying to find some out to build the history there's all in here. And like we to thought about with the Schwab criminalization, I feel just coming from sex workers. It seems as well as an MGI, so like me in favor of this because we are not the big process. So like kind of can't something like anything that's to sort of get being fast to speak about it. So that they sort of start a little bit and
I'm a thing shit personal and then
No, we don't have this remember, but I think it's like we're here like as out sex workers, and for us we've been out for so long, it feels like, that's also our job, etc. But I remember like the first time I said I was a sex worker to somebody else, it was a huge thing to do. It was so shameful for me. I was selling sex for a while. I didn't tell anyone, and I was like, sucking dick at the train station, and for like 20 euros or something like this. Nobody knew about it, and I was so ashamed of it. And I first met another sex worker who told me like, yeah, I'm doing it as well, and it's okay, we can talk about it. It was such a huge burden to be like, oh wow, I'm not the only one doing this, then I'm not like, the worst of the world. But there's such a stigma against it. And in smaller communities, it's so difficult. I think there's not one single mom with kids who would be like, you know what, I'm going to risk losing my kids to social workers, to the state, just to be able to fight the good fight, And like for lots of other LGBT sex workers, so like there's so much stigma even within the community that's like, is it a risk taking worth taking? And I think for us, the only thing we can say is like, it's little by little, like creating safe spaces where sex workers can come. And often LGBTQI sex workers are leading the movement because maybe we don't speak to our families, so we don't care as much about losing this, or we are ODR as trans or LGBT. So if somewhere like maybe through the LGBTQI movement, organizing like a monthly meeting of like LGBTQI sex workers and allies where people don't necessarily have to come out, but people interested to fight. And for us, it's, I really feel that it's one of the most important struggles, not just because you're fighting for your own rights, but you're also fighting for the rights of some of the most marginalized people, including LGBTQI people. And it's really worked the way. So you also fight something that's really dear to your heart and something you have experience about, but also something that can really protect the rights of many other people. So I would encourage people to like do it, find a way to do it that is safe for them, that don't put themselves at risk. And I think that's where the role of allies is very important. But at the same time, I would say, we have some members in ESWA, different organizations, that do not say who in their organization are sex workers. We have one collective, for example, the English Collective of Prostitutes, which exists since the 70s. They don't say, they say like, we are the English Collective of Prostitutes, there is 10 women at this table, and some of us are sex workers, maybe some of us are not, but we're all using this collective name. And others that use a name like Eva Caradona, another organization, who means Eva, the good woman, or the bad woman. And just to say like, this is a pseudonym that we all use when we speak for sex workers, because not all of us can come out. And I think there is this huge pressure for sex workers to come out, but it's really risky, and you really risk losing a lot. So I think you can also try to find ways to create collectives with some sex workers who are not ready to come out, to say like, we are a collective of sex workers and allies. Some of us are ready to come out, some of us are not, and leave it at this.
Yeah, that's basically it. So I think that the key point here is like to find a way, a place where they can share the knowledge, experience, and by little you feel that confidence of coming out and say like, okay, I've also recognized myself and act with the other, and we can talk about the common issues or the common questions, and from that is that's where you start bonding, and can start with something ludic, with a party, with I don't know, dinners or something like that. So like in a relaxing and in a relaxed environment, and people like finding each other, and a little bit takes time. First, it's going to take time, because the stigma is the worst thing. The stigma is what prevents you to get involved. It forces a lot of people living two lives. So they are not wrong, because stigma and the punishment that sometimes that you can get for being a sex worker, so that makes you not going out. So it's also like a vicious circle. That if you're not breaking the stigma, that's why we are. That's the name of this. Yeah. Of this panel precisely, is that the stigma really prevents us to look for our rights and to fight for our rights. Yeah.
And if I may just conclude with this, I think MDRM, who was organized this discussion, and as the vice president of YPB, I think something that also we can build on together, being that their main target audience being the PIQ plus, coupling it with sex work, and our main target audience being mostly, I have to say, cis women, but also inclusive of anyone can do birth. I think that's something that we can collaborate on very heavily, and we are very, very up for having some sort of collaboration with as NGOs, I think, to hopefully set up this multi-sex work organization. It was frankly me, Ruth, and people said, well, probably are tired at this point of being the only the ones who are being called on whenever we're discussing sex work, when none of us are the sex workers, so none of us have the most privilege of knowing what actually is doing it. I'm gonna listen to it, not her, because there's to speak or but maybe you can tell us about the win today Parliament in 2 minutes.
The what?
What happened today in the EU Parliament? Or you with about 15 minutes?
2 minutes. Well, today was voted this report of prostitution that basically they were recommending and pushing the European Union to adopt the Nordic model. We can say like that's it's a good news, although the report passed, but the votes in favor are less than the combination of the abstentions and the noes. So yes, it's adopted, but really the argument of the MEP that presented this is that we are not the majority. The sex worker that wants that wants to defend their rights we are not the majority. That the majority of women in prostitution, they want to abolish it. And today is demonstrated that it's not true. That there are more people also conscious that criminalizing one part of this commercial operation. If one is criminalized, the other one as well. Even though they say we are not. So I think we are doing a lot of progress. We are taking a leap forward compared to what it was 8 years. Yeah, 8 years with a similar report that happened. I think it's 2013, and that the votes were, in favor, like 500 MEPs, like two against, and like I don't know, 50 or something, or abstention, something like that. So now we are turning the tide. We are. I think that people are starting to realize that at least that model is not the way, and we are happy. We're happy that even that we lost.
We're happy that we lost, but not so bad.
And that's a sweet defeat. There also was a very sweet defeat. Yes.
Maybe I can just close and just on this point. I think for us, what's amazing is that, we're talking here about decriminalization. We're excited that Malta might decriminalize sex work. We're excited that we didn't fully lose a shitty report in the European Parliament that is not even binding. It's not going to have any impact on society because it's just a bunch of politicians in Brussels, try to find a knife or meaning to their life by pushing a report that nobody cares about and nobody asks for. But for us, when we talk about prostitution or sex work, what is really amazing is it actually hides the biggest issue that we're talking about. During the pandemic, recently, a few weeks ago, there was an article that the guy who founded OnlyFans is making £1 million a day. £1 million a day on the back of sex workers. Most sex workers on OnlyFans make 120 euro, 100 euro, maybe 500 euros. The most majority of sex workers on OnlyFans spend their time creating pictures, uploading them to sell, and are not making a lot of money from it. But one fucking cis white guy has created this app, is making 1 million a day. Nobody needs 1 million a day. And this guy is making it. But somehow the problem is sex workers and our clients, and we should be criminalized. And the issue is it's always easier to criminalize the smaller people. It's always easier to criminalize the migrant, the trans, etc., the drug user, rather than looking at the real issue. And the real issue is, it's always been, it's capitalism and it's patriarchy. And if people who really care about the lives of sex workers, they would really attack the root causes of why people engage in sex work in the first place, and they would look at, the depth of the global south. Why are people migrating from Africa to Europe and getting killed in the Mediterranean? They would look at border control. They would look at, maximum income. Why is anyone able to make 1 billion a day? That's the real issue. The real issue is not that some people decide to sell their fucking tits online. That's not a problem, and it has never been. So what we would encourage you is do fight for decriminalization, do fight for sex workers' rights, but don't get caught up in the policy world, because that's just a trap to forget what is the big issue, and the big issue is abolishing borders and abolishing capitalism.
Yes.
One day, go. Bye-bye.
Now, I would like to just end on a local note, I don't know if you have any concluding remarks to Svetlana from your end, and I will just conclude after everyone.
I will just say that it was a learning experience for me as well. I was honored to get to be both of you and also this person there, because you have all given me a lot of food for thought. And I hope that we will manage to implement a lot of the things which you spoke about today and for our program at our service.
Thanks, Svetlana. I think for three of you, really, two person heroes always. Also, I must say, given also we're in that experience possible, so the amount of courage that has to come out and to also advocate for sex workers' rights all around Europe and the world. I will end on just a note that if anyone in the room, anyone who is watching and is a sex worker based in Malta, if they feel safe and they want to come out to someone from India and someone from IDB, come and talk to me on Instagram, Giardina, and come to talk to me on Facebook, because yes, in Malta we still use Facebook quite a lot. So feel free to do so. I would like to actually get to know you, and maybe together we can set up this Malta sex worker whatever that would be, because I think we need to actually sit on the decision table, be there present, and not let any politician decide on the lives on sex workers, who's even allies, right? So I think it is up to sex workers themselves to be on that table and take decisions for themselves. So yeah, that's I think pretty much it. So pretty good.
If you don't run about it, and you know that